Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I believe when we left off,
Are you on?
yes, it is. Mr. Speaker, we were on page 5. It's on. Thank you. We were on page 5, and I was proffering an amendment to revise one here to now reflect that 100% of the Department of whatever is accrued under the purview of the Department of Administration goes back to its initial intent, which is for medical referral travels off island. And I believe I asked the assistance of legal counsel to please put that language together, but that was my intent.
All right. On the Rodriguez amendment, who wishes to? The speaker? You're recognized, ma'am.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise in opposition to the amendment. This is right now the only department that actually has used a credit card and have accumulated mileage. The other departments and agencies, or the autonomous agencies that we've listed here, use credit cards, but they're not necessarily for for mileage accrual from their credit cards. When I spoke to, like I said earlier, and I know it's best not to mention a name, but to an individual who said that yes, GWA and GPA actually uses credit cards, but he could not confirm that the credit card was actually accruing any mileage. So I know prior to taking a break, the mover of the amendment was saying that one of the reasons he wanted the 100% of DOA credit card mileage to go to the original program in addition to what travelers accrue. But there's really no, because he had indicated that there are all these other departments and agencies in which they could provide additional travel for students who need to go off island for academic activities or cultural affairs, and also for sports. But as I said earlier, these departments and agencies that are listed are encouraged, or it is suggested that if by chance that they do have credit cards that accrue mileage, that then they participate in this program to send students off island for various activities. But right now, the only one that has any is Department of Administration, and to the tune of 10 million miles. So and for that reason, then I oppose that, because by taking all the 100, making it 100% to go instead of the 50% for medical referrals, then that leaves nothing at all for the school children.
Any other senator wish to be heard? Senator Pangilinan. Any other senator? Senator Pangilinan, you recognize.
Thank you very much, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, which goes back to, my original premise. We're fixated on this 10 million as if that accrual is every single year. That accrual is over a number of years, since they started using the credit card. And I think it might have been goes back to the previous administration. So we're talking about maybe, minimum 4, 8, maybe even 10 years since they've used that to accumulate the miles. So if it's 10 years, then it's 1,000,000 miles a year, and 1,000,000 miles a year is 16 tickets, So if we're now going to say we're going to take 16 tickets away from, and 16 tickets equals 8 patients because it takes about 60,000 miles and plus an escort. So we're talking about 8 patients. We know, I think I'm very, very positive, we all know because they come to our offices, that we refer more than 8 patients a year off island under the MIP and the Medicaid program. So we're now going to say we're now only going to pay for 4 patients and give the rest to the children, which is a good thing too, but it is these patients that need it for, medical purposes. And the fact is that, we're trying to help these individuals, and this was the original intent. Um, so I'm just, that's how it breaks down to me. I removed this 10 million miles out of my mind, and what is it going to mean for the program going forward, So it now goes from 8 patients to 4 patients with the credit card miles. If it's $1 million a year, it's 2 million. I mean, if it's 2 million miles, then it's 16 patients, or we're back up to 8 patients, 16 travelers, and sometimes these patients need more than 1 seat, maybe. So it could be that one patient could use maybe 2, 3, 4 seats, and you need to redeem those miles. So, we're kind of. So this is what I'm thinking. This is the way I look at this, and it is for that reason that I really would like to preserve the use of this program, the use of the miles accumulated from either credit card and travel. To be, let's use this program. There may be some hindrance in accessing the program now because of some of the bureaucracy, and we're trying to unjam that which would make it easier, and now we can help more patients. And then, of course, we're saving money in terms of purchasing tickets, and the money then that would have gone to use to purchase those tickets go back into paying for health services under the MIP program. So there's, to me, is where, the value of this program and implementing it occurs. MIP always needs more money. Medicaid always needs more money. We can't even access all of our Medicaid money because we don't have enough local funds to match. This allows us to now have additional money in there that is not spent on travel, to access maybe more Medicaid matching funds. But it is, doing this kind of change in this program where we're not seeing all of the linkages that are occurring, and it's the fact that it's a cost avoidance. When we send it to the students, there's no cost avoidance for the government of Guam because currently the government of Guam doesn't appropriate money out of its coffers to help these students. Should it? I think we've done in the past when we could afford it. I remember many, many times, even myself working with this body back in the 22nd, 23rd legislature, 24th, where we actually appropriated money for some of these student programs, mock trial, junior statesman, close-up, ROTC, and things like that, where we actually took, government of Guam money and paid for it. And we kind of moved away from that when we found out that, the choices were being made between the off-island travel and healthcare and books and teachers. And we decided that, and the students took the initiative on their own with their instructors to go out and try to help themselves by raising the money themselves. They come to our offices to ask us, for donations, and some of us are able to be more generous than others, but almost all of us try to be as generous as we can to assist these students as well. Just as we do when these patients come into our office asking us for money. And in the past, some of us were able to take money out of our office budget, really, to give these donations. We don't do that. I certainly have never done that. I've never taken, any money appropriated to my office to make a donation to anybody that walks into my office. Every single donation I make to every organization and every person that walks comes out of my own pocket, comes out of my paycheck. It doesn't come out of my government account, nor does it come out of any other business account that I may have. It comes out of my own personal paycheck in all of these donations. It's the same as when we go and we pay our respects to, to friends of ours who passed away, and we try to help their family. Some of us take that money and take our tsinsuli and take it out of our campaign funds. I've never done that. I've never taken campaign funds to pay for my tsinsuli, as some of us have and have admitted and have filed, in our campaign reports. So every single assistance and donation I make to any organization or anybody on this island, that I can afford to, and certainly, and I pinch my other pennies to be able to afford to do so many, many times, comes out of my own paycheck, comes out of the money I earn, and so forth. So when we look at it from that perspective, I just think that, taking 50% away when this is, as they say now, as the only source of miles to be able to help the program at this time using the credit card, then I think we're taking it away from the patients, and we're not taking it away because there's too many miles, We're taking it away because we just want to give it to somebody else, and I think that it takes it away from then the original intention of the program was to help those that we can help, to provide for additional money for healthcare services by not having to use money that for the payment of these travel tickets, and instead use the miles. So that's why I stand in support of the amendment.
Thank you.
I wanted to make something, a point of information. Is that right now, we're not taking away any mileage away from any patient. There are 9.7 million miles in the Ajuda account. 4 individuals are being sent off this week. So we're not losing any miles. We're not taking any miles away from what's currently banked. And the original amendment is even giving an additional 50% of whatever DOA is going to accrue from just travel miles.
Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, if you look at the law here, the law currently now says that the department shall enter an agreement with a bank on Guam for credit card to use payment for travel for employees traveling on government and or federally funded travel and to accrue mileage. So we are taking it away. The current law now says that the credit card miles go to MIP. That's what the current law says. So this takes it away from that, because now, instead of getting 100%, you're going to only give them 50%. It does take it away.
Thank you. Senator San Nicolas. Any other senator after Senator San Nicolas? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have to rise in strong disagreement to the retiring speaker for a number of reasons. First, the retiring speaker initially states that this 10 million isn't accruing, it's just 10 million that's banked. And then later on, the speaker says that if we use those miles for education, we're taking those miles away from people who need to travel for medical reasons. But if the miles are being banked, that means that they weren't needed. And according to Ajuda Foundation, who we've communicated clearly with, they've said that they have more miles than they need to send an average of 50 people a year off island for the MIP program. And so what's happening, Mr. Speaker, is that these miles are getting banked. And we've banked already about 10 million miles. And one of my biggest concerns, Mr. Speaker, is that miles are a depreciating asset. They don't earn interest. Their buying power doesn't go up every year. It's the opposite. As the years pass, it takes more miles to go off island. So as we bank these miles and as we hold on to them as some kind of legacy asset, we're actually eroding their value. And so on the amendment to the language as outlined in the bill, that amendment is going to continue to concentrate more miles into this bank that's losing value. So, Mr. Speaker, I rise in opposition of the amendment. I believe that we need to deploy these miles as prudently as possible, but also as early as possible to make sure that we're capturing their full value. And we're going to get a return on that value in two ways with this bill, Mr. Speaker. One is going to be to continue to support the MIP program, because 50% is going to be going to that. And two is 50% is going to be going now to be investing in our kids and their experiences. And I have a lot to say about that, and I will talk about that on the main motion, Mr. Speaker. But on the amendment, I believe that this amendment is going to continue to allow more miles to bank into a bank that already has 10 million miles. And we're just going to continue to put more miles on top of miles that are losing value as they sit there longer, Mr. Speaker. So I rise in opposition to this amendment, and I believe that we need to be deploying those miles as effectively as possible to retain their full value. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much. Any other senator wish to be heard on the Rodriguez amendment? Senator Respicio.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I signed on as a co-sponsor to Speaker Wampat's bill, specifically because I was encouraged that she was able to stumble across some information provided to her by the Department of Administration that says there's 10.5 million miles that can be that needs to be allocated somewhere, some way, somehow. And through the Speaker's own initiative, Mr. Speaker, she recalled a law that you had passed earlier that provided for a $200,000 appropriation to send students off island for education or cultural activities. Now, I don't believe a single penny has been deposited into a law that you wanted to do. So rather than reinventing the wheel, she worked with you. She agreed that we take your law and we apply the 10.5 million miles that was unallocated for, so that we can fund these programs, so that we can send high school students to events such as Close Up, to events such as the Junior Statesman program, who you recall at one point, these programs were 100% funded by the government of Guam. They were funded by the government of Guam year after year, after year after year, until such time these programs, which should always be a priority, which I'm sure always is a priority, but because of the limited financial resources of this government, these priorities kind of become still a priority, but not funded because of the lack of finances. And so the Speaker found a way to say, let's have a win-win, let's have these miles applied to these programs. And then when some of us felt that that should go to the medically indigent or those who require off-island medical assistance, my observation is that the Speaker said, okay, I'll give you 50%, but we still have to have some recognition, some means to support these off-island education and cultural type activities. So if you see in the version of the latest iteration of this idea, was that she was willing to give 50%. And now it seems like 50% is not enough, and now we're going after 100%. Mr. Speaker, also in the evolution of this idea, we've learned from the Judah Foundation and we've learned from United, and I'll say it again, that they are concerned, and even though we may or may not believe their rationale behind their concern, but that they've lost the government's market share because employees are going through other airlines, they're not going to United, so they don't have to donate their miles. And so they've said that if that's going to be the case, then we're going to remove Ajuda from the website. And Ajuda is telling us that from all their miles that they are able to gather, 80% comes from outside sources, 20% comes from this program. And so they said they have 9.7 million miles banked right now that can very well take care of these off-island medical requests and off-island medical need. But what do our children have, Mr. Speaker? How many miles do our children have? How much cash do we give our children to be able to go and participate in these programs, which I'm telling you, being exposed to these programs do a lot of good for them. Being exposed to Close Up, being exposed to the Junior Foundation program, they have done so much good for a lot of these young up-and-coming people. And so I oppose the amendment simply because I don't think it's fair to the mover of the entire legislation to have stumbled across this 10.5 million miles, to have agreed to give 50%. Now the amendment says you know, 50% is not enough. We want 100%. So I'm saying enough is enough. I oppose the amendment. I think there's an opportunity to satisfy both needs, and we've heard that discussion. And although I appreciate the discussion, I think the discourse is causing us to want to show which is more in need of this kind of miles and which program is more deserving of these kind of miles. And so I rise in opposition to the amendment, and I believe, as we've been told, that there's 9.7 million miles banked. There's an opportunity to share this mileage bank stream. And more importantly, Mr. Speaker, if this legislation passes and signs into law, there's an opportunity to save the relationship between United and Azuda Foundation so they can continue to get miles donated outside of what this program seeks to accomplish and what it has accomplished and the good that it has accomplished. And so I thank you for the opportunity to rise relative to this amendment.
Any other senator wish to be heard on the Rodriguez amendment? There have been three that have risen in opposition. Is there an, okay.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, there's this perception that this 10 million miles that we have, it's sitting there because we don't have any use for it. You know, I don't know if it's just my office, but I don't know, I'm sure you get it too. In your office, Mr. Speaker, you get people come in and say they need to go off island for medical treatment. Their family member needs a heart transplant, needs to go out for cancer treatment, and they're asking for anything. Sometimes they say, just give me $1 if you have $1 or $5, because when I tell them, I'm sorry, I just don't have anything anymore. So there's that perception that because we have that much miles banked, which I'm not too sure. I'm just hearing about this morning that we have that much miles banked, that there's no need for it for medical reasons. I believe, Mr. Speaker, and I'm prepared to make those amendments on the next page. The problem's that if it's indeed true we have that much miles banked, is because the process to use that miles, it's so hard to meet. It says that current law says the following persons are eligible for participation to receive the mileage for off-island medical care: A, patients under the medically indigent program and patients under other DPHSS income-based health programs as approved by the Director, Department of Public Health and Social Services. And also, if you look at Ajuda Foundation's criteria, it's pretty similar. They use a similar criteria. Mr. Speaker, what about for the working poor? What about for that individual that works in the private sector, that has private insurance provided to him, but has 6 kids and needs to take his one child off island? He can't go right now and access that 9-point-whatever million miles that we say we have because of the eligibility, because of the process we have. That's what needs to be changed, if indeed there is that much miles that's being banked. So we can't stand here, we can't sit here, Mr. Speaker, and say, there's that much miles in the bank and we don't, and you know what, it's there, we're not using it, so we got to put it out for other reasons. Let's not be ignorant, Mr. Speaker. We know that if people could access that miles, they'll use them. And so I'm asking my colleagues to please support this amendment, because all we're saying here, Mr. Speaker, is that the existing intent of the law, we're going to preserve it, and as we move down, I'm fine as a way to compromise, Mr. Speaker, is perhaps now that we're adding the other entities here, and we're saying number 2 here says DOE, GCC, UOG, 100% can be accrued for mileage maintained by these entities. I'm fine to saying, okay, as a start, let's give them 50% of what they accrue for that purpose, whatever it's stated here, and give that other 50% back to the medical, because you know what? Even that 9.8 million we have is not enough. So I'm asking my colleagues, Mr. Speaker, to please look at this as a compromise and help the people that really need it and what this law was intended for. So thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank Senator Nicholas.
Point of information, Mr. Speaker.
Please.
The amendment will not open up those miles to those who don't qualify under the MIP program. The amendment simply puts all the miles into the MIP program, but it doesn't make it more eligible for those who are not qualified. I just want to make that clear, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you.
And Mr. Speaker, I'll respond to that because if he was listening, I said in the next page, I'm prepared to make those amendments to change the eligibility. So we need to get over this first.
Thank you. All right.
I need to do another point of information, is that all the individual has to do when they go to a JUDA is not necessarily to public health to get a referral. All they need to do is to show that they have an MIP card and that, you know, they are indigent, that they show, because it's based on income, then that they should be able then to travel. So it's not just having to go to public health and be referred there.
And to save him getting up, he also says it's not just the MIP patients that need help. It's the working poor that need assistance. So on the Rodriguez amendment, is there an objection? I hear 4 oppositions, but no one has objected. All right, there's an objection. Those in favor of the Rodriguez amendment, please indicate by raising your hand. All those in favor? Fails. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I now want to make an amendment on number 2.
Proceed.
As it says here that DOE, GCC, and UOG would be accruing 100% and maintain it for their purpose, I'd like to move, Mr. Speaker, for the same reasons that I stated earlier, that that individuals in our community, especially the working poor, Mr. Speaker, need this assistance. The late Senator Edward Cruz and I believe the 24th Guam Legislature in their wisdom, Mr. Speaker, knew what our people were going through back then. And unfortunately, it's the same today, Mr. Speaker. And so we can't be ignorant of the fact that our people need these miles to go off island, Mr. Speaker, for medical purposes. And so my amendment is to keep it intact, however, to use 50% of that and to divert it into for use for medical referral. So I don't know how that would, but that's my intent.
So if I understand it correctly, your amendment would be on line 8 to say 50% of the accrued mileage maintained by shall be used to send eligible students to off-island academic, and then the remaining, like it was on line 5, the remaining 50% shall be used to support off-island medical referral pursuant.
That's correct. Yes.
All right, that's the Rodriguez amendment to subsection 2. Madam Speaker, you're recognized.
Thank you very much. I'm going to have to object to this amendment as well, because earlier I had stated the Department of Education does not have a credit card right now and do not charge for anything. I don't know about the University of Guam. We put them down because it's an education institution. The community college is the only one, but currently they are using their mileage to send their students off island to compete, like in the culinary arts program. So if you're going to take 50% of this, it's going to be from GC, right now at least, only GCC that I know of, because the Department of Education does not have any mileage. And I'm going to object to this because GCC is doing exactly what this bill wants to do, is to be able then is to send students off island, and they're using their own mileage to send their students as well. So I object to the amendment.
Thank you. Any other senator wish to be heard on the Rodriguez amendment to subsection 2? Senator Ben Pangilinan.
Speaker. Speaker, once again, I rise in support of the amendment. And when we look at what the program does, the program needs to continue to be looked at on how we can give people with the need for off-island health care access to it. The mileage that's been banked is because we haven't facilitated the access to these, that there are decisions being made that prevent us from being more efficient in the deployment of these assets so that they don't depreciate. So we're making those changes into that. And that's why we've been able to accrue these miles, not because we don't need them. For the current program eligible recipients, but also, as the good senator has mentioned, we need to take a look at where we need to give help to our people who are struggling with health care and the inability to access that health care here on Guam, must go off island, and don't have the financial resources to get off island. And that when they don't have that, the government pays up cash. And how can we find resources to free up that cash for other purposes, such as more medical services, and use other assets of the government that are available, like the mileage, to give them then the ability to go off island for that care. So I see that if we put the efficiencies into the program, you know, remove some of the barriers, the bureaucratic barriers that are in there, we're going to need these miles. We will need these miles. And if we decide to as he mentions, expand the eligibility, and we do have, you know, eligible people that are not being helped because they don't fall specifically into that. The current program allows for access to those that are eligible for other programs at the Department of Public Health and Social Services that are income-based, you know? So we're just not, we've been concentrating on the MIP and the Medicare, Medicaid and so forth, because that's what we have started out with. But the current statute, the amended statutes, allow other recipients of other programs at public health who need off-island care, who may not be under MIP, to access this program. If we push those people in through this program, we need those miles. We can deploy those miles. The $10 million mile that is accrued has not been deployed in some cases because somehow, and maybe we should bring these people in that are administering this program to explain it to everybody, because from what the speaker is telling me, what they told them and what they told me last week in my office, they're two different things. They told me that, you know, the policy is you use the lowest fare. Now the speaker's saying that they told her that everybody's getting around that they're able to circumvent that. How are they able to circumvent that? Let's put them on the record here, because those are two contradictory statements that are being told public officials. You know, and so I agree that, you know, we need to continue to try and preserve, you know, the assets for this program to those, in my opinion, needed the most at this time and need the help. They need the help. And so that's why I stand in support of the amendment.
Thank you. On the amendment,
Yes, but I have to make sure I correct something. It's not the lowest, I didn't say the lowest rate, I said the lowest unrestricted rate is the word that I used. And I want to make sure that that is correct, that I'm not saying the government is trying to go around all this to figure out to do something illegal to try to get another fare.
on the Rodriguez amendment, there's been an objection. The amendment is on line 8 to change that to 50% and to add a line similar to line 5, the remaining 50% to support off-island medical referral. All those in favor of the Rodriguez amendment, please indicate by raising your hand. Fails. Senator Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I have similar amendments, and maybe I can just save the body time. Is for number 3, 4, 5. Is also my intent is to have 50% of the miles accrued by those entities put under the medical referral pursuant to subsection 23111F of the existing law.
Thank you. Thank you. Senator Rodriguez is offering an amendment to amend 3, 4, and 5 similarly. Is there an objection to that? I imagine. There. All right, there is an objection. All those in favor of the Rodriguez amendment to subsection 3, 4, and 5 to make it 50-50 split, raise your right hand. Any hand. Motion fails.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'm on page 6 now, and I'd like to, as I was speaking earlier, see how we could change the requirements on how individuals are eligible to access these miles. Because if for some reason this does pass as our body and signed into law, then those miles that, the 10 million miles that apparently is being banked would not be open for purposes other than medical purposes. And so what I'd like to do, Mr. Speaker, is make those amendments here right now, as it reads in current law, is that patients under the MIP program and other public health income-based health programs are the only ones who are eligible to access these miles. And what I'd like to do is expand this, and maybe the legal counsel can help us expand it now to other individuals that may have private insurance, or people who just don't qualify under these criteria.
I think we need to take a short recess to get the legal counsel together. The chair will call for a short recess. Find legal counsel. Rodriguez, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to my colleagues for waiting on this amendment. Mr. Speaker, what this amendment does on line 3, page 7, it now opens up the eligibility to others in our community who may not have qualified under the MIP program or other income-based programs within public health to now be eligible to access these miles. And so we put a process here, and I'll read the amendment, Mr. Speaker. It's on line 3, page 7. After programs, add or by any other needs-based requirements for patients with catastrophic illness as prescribed by the Director, Department of Public Health and Social Services pursuant to the AAA process. So what this does, Mr. Speaker, is gets the Director of Public Health to come up with a mechanism, to come up with a criteria on now how we could address those individuals that I mentioned earlier, the working poor, the individual that, just like you said, is working, perhaps makes $60,000 a year, has 6 kids, probably has about 150,000 obligations, because that's what happens today to our people, and so now as the existing law states, those individuals can't access these miles, and so we want to open it up and make sure that we give an opportunity to the most vulnerable in our community. So I'm asking my colleagues for their support on this. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much for the amendment, Senator Rodriguez. Those who wish to speak on it, I see Senator Munoz Barnes and then Senator Respicio, then Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. I want to say that I do and I will stand in support of this amendment. I did have concerns when I wanted to speak on the main motion, and now that it's being addressed right now, I want to say I stand in support of this. We know that we have a lot of folks in our community who literally, husbands and wife, who live paycheck to paycheck, who are not in the indigent part, but are both working, are a part of the working class families, literally living from paycheck to paycheck. And when some medical catastrophe happens, they don't have the means to pay for special treatment or specialty treatment and have to be referred off island. And this is one way of dealing with that. So I want to say I thank the author of this amendment, and I appreciate where it's coming from, and that I will support this amendment. Sana Masi.
Thank you very much. Senator Respicio.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of the amendment, but I want to ask if the sponsor of the amendment would yield to the question of whether or not, by indicating a catastrophic illness, if we are limiting those who would be eligible for this kind of program, would have to have a certified catastrophic illness in order to become eligible. I say this because I believe there's a catastrophic illness fund within the Department of Public Health, and according to that fund, you have to pay the first $30,000, and then that fund kicks in and pays the dollar after the $30,000. I don't know if that program is still in existence today, but at some point I recall that that's what it was. And so based on that catastrophic illness fund, they've identified certain illnesses that would qualify for that particular program. And so if I understand the mover's intent, which I absolutely support, I want to make sure that we don't limit these needs for off-island medical treatment just to those catastrophic illnesses, and it could be other illnesses which still require off-island medical attention.
Thank you. I imagine he's trying to make sure that it doesn't include my cosmetic surgery or...
Absolutely not, Mr. Speaker, but certainly it could.
There isn't enough
like,
money
for example,
in the world for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Senator Rodriguez, do you yield to the question?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you very much to our good colleague, the Majority Leader, for that. And perhaps to make it clear, I can amend the amendment and remove change the word catastrophic to any other illness. I guess as prescribed by the director. But then just to state on the record and to make sure that my intent is clear, this is for any other for any illness for any medical illness that is needed to take care of individuals that can't get it now, can't qualify because of the income-based requirement. And so I want to make that clear.
All right. Respicio, no, any objection to Senator Rodriguez amending it to remove catastrophic and just allow it to be the AAA process as determined by the Director of Public Health and Social Services for medical? Okay. Madam Speaker, you're recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I support this amendment, but what I wanted to ask maybe is that whether it be a technical amendment, because if you read page 7 on A, section A, it actually talks also about financial need as identified under the requirements of MIP and public health. Maybe that the same language also be included.
The amendment is at the very end of that sentence.
No, for line
The amendment
3,
is on that section.
page
On
7.
line 3.
Oh, no, oh, I'm so sorry. But how about then in page 6, originally when he was talking about it on for line 16? That's where originally when he spoke, that was what I had marked on my, so page 6 and page 7,
I
the
I
same
think
language.
it's just adding on the financial need to expand on that.
But not necessarily patients, okay.
There are two separate ones. There's the MIP program in A on page 6, and then okay.
Mr. Speaker, I guess it's a
Speak-
technical change that needs to
Okay,
be made.
and legal counsel said she can correct that if necessary. Senator Nicholas, any other senator after Senator Nicholas? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I very much understand the intentions of the amendment, and I very much appreciate them. We have a major working poor problem on our island. I don't believe this amendment in and of itself is going to solve that. I think it's a step in the right direction. However, I have reservations, Mr. Speaker, and my reservations are mechanical in nature in terms of how this is going to play out for the MIP program. Because if we open it up now to this new amendment, what if we deplete all of the miles for working poor people, and then at the end of the year, or towards the end of the year, we have truly indigent and not enough miles? So that's where I have that's where I have an issue with the amendment, because we open the door to wiping out the mileage before we get to the indigent. And a comment was just made on the side here, Mr. Speaker, that, well, that's why we should go back and do it all 100%, but that still wouldn't ameliorate the problem. Even if it was 100% going into this program, all of a sudden, by opening it up to the working poor, which I fully understand, we run the risk of wiping out all the miles, whether it's 100% or 200% or 2,000%. We run the risk of wiping out all the miles and having truly indigent not having any recourse whatsoever. So I understand the intentions of the amendment. I understand that we need to solve the problem of the working poor. And I am fully 100% behind that implication, Mr. Speaker. I was born into a working poor family. But this wouldn't solve that problem, and it actually opens the door to an even bigger problem of not having a resource available for the truly indigent as defined in the law. So I guess I'd like to put that up for consideration by the body and rise in objection of the amendment. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
There's been an objection. Any other senator wish to be heard on the Rodriguez amendment? Do you wish to close, Senator Rodriguez? All right, there's been an objection to the Rodriguez amendment. All those in favor of the Rodriguez amendment to have a AAA process by which the Director of Public Health can implement a needs-based eligibility, please raise your hand. Motion carries. Senator Rodriguez, you still have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and thank you very much to my colleagues. Mr. Speaker, the last amendment I have here is on page 12. Now that we had included that amendment that the Director of Public Health must go through a AAA process, I would like to change the effective date of this act, Mr. Speaker, to make it reflect this section shall become effective after the establishment of the requirements that we just included on page 7. So it's either that or no later than 90 days, whichever comes first.
The amendment is no later than 90 days after enactment or after implementation of the amendment proposed on page 7, whichever comes first? No?
Yeah,
The passage of,
the passage of,
Yeah.
yes, the AAA of
Yeah.
of what we have. That's right.
yeah, the AAA process on page 7. On the, Madam Speaker. Any other senator wish to be heard after the speaker on this amendment? Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, this amendment will be fine if we were only talking about the medical side of the bill, but surely not for the school children who are going to be traveling for the events. We're approaching the summer months in which, of course, students will be traveling for different types of events, even right now, actually, and this would delay the Department of Education or Department of Administration for even, you know, allowing for and getting the tickets for any type of travel. So I would have to object to this amendment unless we want to separate this to say that this effective date only would be for, which really wouldn't have made any sense anyway, because as soon as the AAA process is done for the additional group of individuals to include the working poor, otherwise it's going to hold off as well for any other indigent programs. So either way, it wouldn't work for both programs, with the exception only of the new group of individuals that we're trying to address or include them to participate in this program. So I object to the amendment.
There's been an objection. Any other senator wish to be heard? Senator Rodriguez, do you wish to close or just call the question? Call the question on the amendment, on the effective date. All those in favor of the Rodriguez amendment, please indicate by raising your hand. Motion fails. Oh, wait. Oh, 8. Okay, it passed.
Miss, no, please understand that what we did here is for the entire bill. It's not just you know, for the working poor, that we want to include them to do the AAA process. That's my understanding, unless legal counsel is going to tell me otherwise. And I said earlier, that means that everything that we're doing here includes every single program, not just the travel for the students, those currently in the same program, and now the third group, the working poor. So I like to,
Short break.
Mr. Speaker, notwithstanding the House rule, I would like to request that we reconsider the action of this body on that particular amendment, the previous amendment.
Any objection to the reconsideration? Objection has been raised. All those in favor of reconsidering the action of the body, raise your right. Raise any hand. Motion passes. On the effective date, is there an amendment that you wish to? There being none, the next. Oh, okay. Opens it back up. All right, fine. You made the motion to reconsider, so the motion's back on the floor, so he's going to speak on it.
No, but we were reconsidering the vote, and so what are we going to reconsider? What's the amendment to reconsider? To delete, right? So I want to speak on the motion to delete. To delete the adopted. Yes. Right. And I want to speak. Yeah.
To reconsider it.
Right.
We're just reconsidering the vote and the amendment. You can speak.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, on the amendment, that's right. Mr. Speaker, I really think we need that time frame. It's not a time to kill it, but there's so many different information, conflicting stories of what the need is of MIP, how it's implemented, and so forth, and the time that it would take the director to put together the list and adopt it. We have the hearing on that. Then we can really get a true picture. on what the needs are of MIP under this program. When we unjam the log jam, does it really, do we now need more MIP miles or less MIP miles? So, you know, given how everybody has pockets of information that at times conflict, the time that it takes to put those rules and regulations in place, we can then figure out what is the real picture, what are the true needs, what are the real implementation impediments, what are, you know, is United really going to pull the program? Is it really true that they're losing miles, travel because employees get to circumvent? We can get all of that, put on the record with people speaking before this body at the same time so that we don't get the mixed messages. So I really think it serves a good purpose to use that time wisely then to allow us to assess the true needs of the MIP program. And is this change that we're putting in going to harm the program and deny people who need this medical care and can't access travel funds any other way and give it, and use this program to pay for them going off island? So I just think that it'll be a good thing, and therefore I support, keeping the original amendment, which gives us the time to kind of go back and re-examine the things in here, because when the program was done, it was, I don't think the MIP people, the MIP program knew the effect of using it for education and had an opportunity to come in and comment as much. And this gives us the opportunity to hear from the other side. We know that the students, can use miles to travel. I would also like to know, how are they going to decide which students to give those travel, those free tickets to? Who are we going to give those free tickets to? How is DOA or DOE and UOG, how are they going to determine who needs it? Is it just on who now can influence the president of university to give him the free ticket, or who can influence, the coach or the superintendent? I think it's necessary that DOA or DOE, kind of figure out how is it that when they have 10 tickets and they have 100 students, how are they going to decide which students to give those 10 tickets to? We don't know that. We're leaving it all that up to them. I think we deserve to know that as a legislative body when we're going to implement a program like that. What are we going to base it on? A lottery? I don't know. But we have no idea how this program, we know exactly how it works when we use the mileage for the MIP and the Medicare. And now in other medical needs, because we're going to promulgate rules and regs. DOE, GCC, how do they decide that it goes to Pa-Taw-Taw-Tano, or to go to Famagu'un, Guam, or to go to, Frank Rabon? How do we know what they're going to use, what criteria they're going to use when they have 10 tickets and they have 20 people asking them for tickets? We don't know that. We don't even set up a system to have them figure out a mechanism to make those kind of decisions so it's fair. And I think that with this relief that can be granted to us in the time frame, we can ask then these other entities that are going to be setting up this program and making choices on how to dole out now government dollar tickets, because this is government funds. How are they going to decide who gets it and who doesn't? I think we as a body deserve to know that. And perhaps they should all go through AAA and adopt rules and regulations, and how they're going to make a decision when they have 10 tickets available through the Miles program and they have 100 people needing them.
Thank you. Before we take a vote on it, I'll take a short recess and ask all the members of the legislature to read Section 2 on transition, implementation and transition, and see if that clears up your concerns. The very bottom of the last page, your bill has a transition and implementation section that may. So I'll take a recess and ask everybody to please read that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And thank you for the recess, and we had an opportunity to speak with legal counsel. And on page 12, then, lines 12 and 13, is the motion will be just to delete this particular language from the bill. She, it was, legal counsel felt it was more of a technical thing because we don't want to delete this, where the strike-through is from October 1st, 2011, which was actually had been conducted for the original program. So the motion is to delete then lines 12 and 13 on page 12.
Any objection, or does anybody wish to be heard on that motion? No objection. Senator Rodriguez, do you have any further motions? Thank you very much, Senator Rodriguez. The next I have is Senator Yamashita. On the main motion, followed by Senator San Nicolas, Munya Barnes, and then Haddock.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for allowing me the opportunity to speak on Bill number 44-32. Mr. Speaker, throughout the day we've been talking about the need to help save our lives. We've been talking about our health issues. We've been talking about the high need of our medically indigent population. We've been talking about our working poor. We've been talking about how the numbers have pretty much been constant. We've talked about how leadership in the past have created programs to help address that, and the respect to keep those programs as is. Well, we've talked about how we also need to really drill down and find out what's working and not working, how we need to work with other airlines. I think one critical piece is that we know that Senator Carlotta supports what we're trying to do here, and that she does raise concerns about ensuring that the AJUDA program does continue in meeting and helping to meet the needs of some of our people. And as we talk about the needs of our people, and there's such a great need, I kept thinking about how on our island of 159,000 people, we have 44,000 people on some sort of public assistance. That's about a third of us. In our schools, free reduced lunch program, we have near 90%, maybe 100% in some of our elementary schools. And at our secondary schools, it goes down to maybe 50%, simply because we think that our adolescents don't like filling out the paperwork or don't like getting the color tickets that says, I get free lunch. My point with this is that we have such a huge population that isn't making it, that isn't cutting it. So if the government steps up and helps them eat healthy lunch, get some kind of lunch, helps them with their health issues because they can't economically make it, or because they're just essentially unhealthy. And I would ask that we put this perspective, and I don't disagree with any of the perspectives that have been brought forward today, but I ask that we consider this particular perspective in this whole scheme, in this whole picture. And that is that we need to get healthier on this island. And that is that we need to start working more so that we can be making acceptable incomes, so that we can pay our bills, and so that we can ensure that we don't have to go fill out these forms and pray that somebody will say, okay, we're going to help you. And I suggest that one of the ways that we do this is, of course, strengthening early childhood education. And I've been talking about that throughout all the bills this week where it's relevant and meaningful. But another part is through our school system. And that is to ensure that our schooling becomes more relevant and meaningful. And as most of us don't have the kind of money to be able to go off-island, these off-island opportunities for our students, Mr. Speaker, are the once-in-a-lifetime opportunities for our kids. And there are competitions in the classroom level, the school level, the regional level, the district level, that then decides they're going to represent Guam. So we send our kids in ROTC, military competitions, close-up, junior statesman, leadership programs, cultural events, DECA, business competitions, mock trials, Southern High, forensic. We go to geography B, culinary arts, lodging. There are so many off-island competition activities that our kids go and they bring home the prizes. And I'm sure you've been at the airport when they've come home, or you've gone to their schools and given them resolutions. But the off-island experience is worth everything that we should be supporting. That is what motivates our students to keep going, to learn, to succeed, to graduate from high school, and then hopefully go on to post-secondary education. Very few of our people, we've got over a third in public assistance, very few of our people can get on an airplane. Very few. Talked about shutting down the planetarium, and though the University of Guam says it's not a part of their mission, my argument is there's so very few education endeavors like that on our island. You can take your nieces off island, Mr. Speaker. I'm sure you have. I can take my oldest son. My younger son I can't because he doesn't do well on airplanes, so I can't do that. So that's another group here. That's about 10% of our children with disabilities who are not going to go anywhere. It's just the way that is. And so, but what I am talking to is supporting an opportunity so that these students can go. And even as we provide this opportunity, they still have to fundraise. They still have to find a way to make money so that they can buy stuff. When you look at these students who come back and you listen to their excitement, you see the glow in their eyes. I was at Okudu 2 years ago, and for the first time, and that school just opened, and the first time that ROTC group went to Miami, over 2/3 of that group had never been on an airplane before. But yet, this very brave teacher, this very brave soldier, took these children, and they earned first place. First place. And they came back, and they're ready to study and learn and keep on going. And that is the kind of opportunity that this kind of measure will provide that will then help our kids finish school, learn, get a job, and learn how to be healthy with themselves. And so as we are concerned about our health, our mental health, our physical health, in one sense, this will help address that as well. So, Mr. Speaker, I share the concerns that have all been raised, but I do ask that we all think about this measure as a way to grow our economy, to increase healthy practices on our island, and to provide opportunities for most of our children, most of our students who don't have the money right now to go off island and to compete and to stand with pride, to be the Guam ambassador, to say, this is Guam, we are it, we can, and we are. And then to go, just be there, and then to come home and to know that perhaps the grass is greener on this side. That experience of being off island is so priceless. Some of us have had the opportunity to go off island, and we know it's invaluable. It is so invaluable. I think this measure is a very wise. It won't pay for everybody. We won't be able to pay everything. But I think the whole idea of getting the different agencies to support the different programs is a very creative one. Very creative. And I remember when one of our freshman senators here came home with second place from Southern High. We were so proud. Southern High had just opened. And they came home being second in the nation in mock trial. Second in the nation. And we were at the airport and we rolled out that red carpet. And at that time, it is true, local appropriations paid for them. That is very true. But those days are gone. And so those are the kinds of opportunities that I would like to foster. And they're opportunities, they're not giveaways. You work hard, we will support you, you go, do your best, you come back, and you continue to work. And you be healthy, you get a good job, and you keep it going. So that is one perspective in addition to all the other perspectives that have been offered by our colleagues. Now, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, Senator Yamashita. Senator Nicholas, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I appreciate all the discourse that we've had on this bill today. It's taken a lot of time. It's been pretty animated. We've had a lot of amendments, and we've had a lot of very good discussions. And one of the very, very good points that were brought up was that we have a massive working poor problem here on our island. And we need to address this problem. And I believe that there's so many different ways for us to address this problem, Mr. Speaker. We need to help our working poor get insurance. We need to grow our economy. We need to implement systems and programs that are going to turn around this working poor situation so that we have more people making more money in a more vibrant economy, in a community that is able to take care of its people holistically. Throughout the course of discussion on this bill and throughout all of its amendments, I've been a very staunch defender of its original language, because I believe that the original language of this bill sets us on that course. And I would like to thank the retiring speaker, the good Senator Yamashita, for everything that she said. I agree wholeheartedly with her sentiments. I believe that the provisions of this bill as originally drafted provided for the needs of all of our indigent, and also took the mileage in excess of that which we needed for our medically indigent and applied it to our kids, to allow them to go off island, to allow them to have those experiences. And that is so important, Mr. Speaker, because I can attest to it from a very personal level. In 1994, I was a 13-year-old middle schooler. And I was bullied really bad in middle school. I would stand in line to go get my lunch and people would spit in my hair, wouldn't know who it was. The bad joke would be to go around and say, "Oh, you like Michael St. Nicholas." That would be the bad joke among the bullies to the ladies, among the girls there in the middle school. It was really, really rough, Mr. Speaker. And I found solace in my social studies book. I would just read my social studies book. I would read about all those people who have risen up through history in the face of so many challenges and did well. I had a really excellent social studies teacher in Mrs. Edith Cruz, who just made me fall in love with the subject so much more. So much, in fact, that during recess, I would hang out in my home economics class. My teacher was the late Patricia Affligwe. She was a great teacher also. And in that class, I would talk to her, in that recess break, I would talk to her about social studies. And she said to me, "Michael, I'm the advisor of Close Up. Why don't you go? I think you'll really, really like it." And I went home and I told my parents, and they asked how much it was, and we couldn't afford it. I really wanted to go. And as the retiring speaker said, during that time, the government had money, and in the end, we were so fortunate that then Governor Joseph Ada he was still the governor at the time. This was towards the end of his administration. Then Governor Joseph Ada gave us the money to go to Close Up. And so there I was, this bullied 13-year-old, very low self-esteem, going to Washington, D.C. for Close Up. And it was the experience of a lifetime. It was my first time being off island, first time seeing the Capitol. And because I read my social studies book so much, I knew about all the landmarks, about all the historical figures. And during that trip, I don't know how the Close Up program works now, but we broke off into different groups. And we had a room moderator. And my room moderator was a stateside gentleman. His name was Jeremy. I don't know where Jeremy is now. But Jeremy further changed my life forever. Because he always encouraged me. He always told me how impressed he was with how much I knew about all the different places that I was seeing. And at the end of our close-up trip, we took a group picture, and I brought it with me. I actually have my whole box of memories, Mr. Speaker, that I refer to on a regular basis to help remind me of the things that I've gone through in life and to help guide me as we deliberate on this floor. And I pulled out this picture, Mr. Speaker, when this bill came up, because Jeremy wrote me a note that I'd like to read. And it's a note that I've pulled out many times growing up, and the challenges of adolescence and being a young man and trying to find yourself. And Jeremy wrote in 1994, he said, "Mike, well, I really don't know where to begin, but I'll just say that you are one of the brightest students I have ever had. I put you in the same league as my high school seniors. I'm not just saying that either. I hope you realize that your close-up experience has just begun. Now you have a responsibility to gain even more knowledge, to thoroughly present your views effectively. Good luck, and I wish you success in all your future endeavors." This was Jeremy in 1994. And it meant the world to me, Mr. Speaker. And so I'm very, very, very sensitive to any kind of opportunities that we can give to young people to have the same experiences. And I always balance that, just as I balanced it in my deliberations on all of these issues today, because I want to make sure we're meeting the needs of our indigent. I want to make sure that we're able to send the poor off to get the medical treatment they need. I'm very, very sympathetic to the needs of the working poor, and I believe we need to solve that problem. But as the retiring speaker said, these experiences cannot be measured, and they have a tremendous value to those who are experiencing them. That experience for me changed my life. And I want other young people's lives to be able to be changed the same way. And this bill, in its original language, and even as amended, will be able to do that. It would have been able to do it more prior to the amendments, but I believe that in its form, it still will be able to. In my senior year in high school, I was very, very fortunate to be a member of the mock trial team that the retiring speaker spoke about in 1998. And we ended up winning the island-wide competition. And I kind of wanted to talk about that too, because it was brought up earlier that these kids can go fundraise and raise the money for it. But when you win a competition and you end up qualifying for national or regional representation, that doesn't give you a very big window to fundraise. And so we came in first, and we needed money. And the governor at the time, 1998, Governor Gutierrez, this was 1998 when the government again was doing very, very well. He was able to give us the money for our Guam team to go off and represent Guam nationally. And we beat out every other state, save for one. And we even reviewed that championship match, and we look back on it and we're like, we won that one too. But from that experience, Mr. Speaker, some of my colleagues on the team have gone off. Ms. Leslie Travis, who was my co-counsel in that mock trial competition, is now an attorney on this island. Mr. Joshua Tikenko, whose family hails from Malesut, is now a newscaster for Pacific News Center. And there are many, many more young people on that team whose lives were changed by that experience. So I rise in full support of this bill. I believe that we're going to change lives. And those changes are going to be the seeds that we plant that are going to grow into the tree that's going to bear the fruit so that we're no longer the working poor. We're no longer the insecure. I don't know where I would be if it wasn't for those experiences, Mr. Speaker. And so I want to give a heartfelt and dangklu na sidus maasi to the author of this legislation, our Speaker, Judy Wampat, for constructing something that I believe is going to have a tremendous impact on so many young people, the people of Guam and the island of Guam, not in just one circumstance, but in many circumstances. And I just want to quickly address some of the points that were raised throughout the dialogue of this bill. One of them was the suggestion, why don't we use this for government trips? I'm concerned about that, because if we go out and say that we have all these miles for government trips, I'm worried that the memo is going to be circulated, write down what training you want to go to, write down what training you want to go to, because we have miles for trips. At least for now, if you're going to go pay for a government trip, the money has to be there. And so when we certify that funds are available, we've got to make sure those funds are going to go for a trip that's going to actually have an impact on the agency. It's not going to be viewed as much as a free-for-all as if we were just giving out miles for trips. I wanted to talk about how mileage programs can change. I think it takes as much miles now to go to the Philippines today as it did to go to the West Coast 10, 20 years ago. So the banking and aging of these miles needs to be put into that context. We can't allow the value of those miles to depreciate by not utilizing them. I wanted to talk about Dr. Eddie Cruz, because this was brought up about how the original use of these miles was a sort of legacy of his. And I believe that his legacy is greater than the use of miles for medical trips. His legacy, and a legacy that I would be so honored to have or share as well, is that he built a system, a lasting system that benefits our people to this day. And a system, a working system that we are looking to improve, that will now allow his legacy to branch out beyond the medical people that need to be helped, but now into the students and their futures and the future of this island and the experiences that I just shared. That is now also going to be a part of his legacy with this bill, Mr. Speaker. We have an existing system that works. We have a community partner in Adzuda that is doing a fantastic job. An existing infrastructure that is able to meet the needs currently of our indigent. It's not able to meet the needs of our working poor. But we need to do so much more to address that need than simply tinkering with a bill to allow mileage to go to that. And I'm very willing to sit down with my fellow senators and work on those solutions. But for now, I'm just very honored to rise in support of this bill that I know, I don't hope, I know, will impact and change the lives of so many young people for generations to come. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, Senator Nicholas. Senator Munya Barnes, do you still wish to speak on the bill? You're recognized.
Situs Masi, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, yes, it is true there was a lot of discussion on this bill today, and some have even quoted to me that this is just as heavy-heated as the budget bill. And I said, yes, you're right indeed. But as we look at opening the doors for parity and giving opportunities for those, not just within the indigent community, but within the working class families, in case there's a need of an emergency and they're not being able to afford the added expenses after paying for the day-to-day livelihoods within their family. Um, this bill opens an opportunity for additional benefits to our island residents. And in the beginning, I'd be remiss if I didn't say I didn't have concerns regarding that, because I know that the intent of the bill was to provide for the medical needs and those who needed that medical need for travel, that there was an opportunity for them to go, but that would have been within the indigent community, those that were in the Medicaid and wealth MIP program. It wasn't the MIP and then opened up to the the Medicaid program. This bill adds to the educational support and providing air travel or transportation travel for those within the Department of Education. My concern, Mr. Speaker, is on page 3 of this bill, on line 17, there is a definition of what student means. And according to this definition, and I know the good author of this legislature, I didn't have the opportunity to speak with her on it, but it said student means a person enrolled in the Guam Department of Education school. But when you go to page 11, it talks about who's going to coordinate the rules and regs and how they're going to utilize the accrued mileage for off-island school student travel involving academic, sports, and cultural activities. And my concern, Mr. Speaker, is I brought this up to both legal counsels, and I asked, we have students on this island who come from working class families, but more importantly, some from the indigent community who are, for some good reason and another, are in a private school system because they were afforded that opportunity through other means. Some of those students play a major part of the sporting activity with the public schools, the cultural activities with the public schools, and Mr. Speaker, as chair of as chair of Cultural Affairs, knows that a lot of the GUMAs here on Guam incorporate not just a specific group of students, but it's open to all the students in the island of Guam. And my concern is if we define the definition of what a student means here and not give an opportunity for those students who are in some kind of private school, but are a part of this academic or sports or cultural activities. We talked about mock trials. We talked about, the cultural activities, and as far as the dance troops, the speaking groups, the whole Chamorro culture nonprofit organizations that are out there that would love to take advantage of programs like this, because they do have a lot of their students and their children who are a part of the public school system after the school program, that probably if we would keep this definition to this term on page 3 on line 17, will eliminate them from giving them the opportunity to be a part of that cultural team, of that sporting team, or of that academic team. I'm going to tell you, my son, who graduated in 2008, first went to Father Duenas and then went to Notre Dame. He did ask to play baseball in another private school, but of course that school said that they had to take care of their students first. But the rules today in the public school system says, so that they won't deprive any student from playing the sporting activity within the interscholastic school program, that if you are going to a school and you are not, and your school does not have a team then you are more than welcome to play for a school in the public school system that will take you in. So by chance, the principal of Southern High heard that my son wanted to play baseball. He's a very avid baseball player, and had the opportunity to go to the Little League World Series, not on one occasion, but on 2 different occasions. Had the opportunity to play for Southern High School for all 4 years. And that was because that opportunity was open to him. And he wasn't a student of the private school. He was a former student. And went to a public school and then went to a private school. So he's had the experience of both schools. And I'm just saying that, has it happened? Yes. There are students who come from private schools who are a part of these different activities that we're looking at. And it would be a shame to deprive those students who are part of those public school programs be told they can't go because they're still going to private school. We have students today that go to private school and that are playing for the public school system in soccer, in baseball, in football, and in golf. Yes, that is a true statement. And I'm just saying maybe we should redefine the definition of what a student means. So I'm asking if legal counsel can look at this, or what are the parameters of some parent who pays their taxes, who's a part of the private, who have chosen to send their school to a private school because they were given, there are a lot of programs that allow for the working class families to go to different private schools here in Guam. What if they come and say, wait, it's not fair that this one cultural activity group gets to go because they're a part of the middle school program, the dance troupe, and they're going to represent Guam in Washington, D.C. or in Europe, and this program may give them the opportunity to pay for their trip, but because that one student is not a public school student, then I'm sorry, we can't pay for your way. So I leave that up to see if I can get a legal opinion on that, or see what we could do to define, or do we leave it up to the board, to this group of people who are going to promulgate the rules and regs. But if I don't clarify what student means, then that opportunity may not be given to that student who is a part of the private school system, but who does participate in a public school program. So can I ask for a minute recess to?
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And yes, and I think maybe there might be a way to do this, because the retiring speaker actually is correct that there are students who do participate in the private education programs. So maybe the way to do this in amending the language where student means a person who participates in a Guam Department of School academic, sports, and cultural activities, then that opens it up then for students who participate with the Department of Education on the Department of Education activities. We have such a thing as the mock trial that also takes place, and sometimes it is the private schools who may win, but it is an overall education, Department of Education program. The Forensic League also is another program, Close Up and all that. So sports in particular, because sometimes some of our schools may not have the full complement of students in a team, that they actually do allow some of the private schools to play with them, and vice versa. But in this case, that's the language that I like to offer the previous speaker, if she's fine with that.
Did the clerks and the legal counsel catch that?
So what it would be, student means a person, and the delete enrolled, who participates in a Guam Department of Education delete school, and say academic, sports, and cultural activities.
We'll take a short break so you can write, help legal counsel. She's looking more confused than me. floor, or are you going to yield it to the speaker?
Okay.
Madam Speaker.
Thank you very much. In response then to the senator, is that on page 3, then lines 17 and 18, that would just make I'd like to make a motion to delete then, because on page 11 it did say that the superintendent, in collaboration with all the different heads that are participating or could participate, would actually then promulgate rules and regulations. So we'll let them be the ones to make that
Okay,
determination.
on the motion to delete 12 and lines 17 and 18 on page 3, any objection? Removing the definition of student and letting the rules and regulations cover it all. Mr.
Thank you very much. I'd like to speak on that motion.
Please.
Thank you very much. You know, I guess I look back at, you know, just, again, what are we trying to do here with regards to how this is going to be affected in terms of implementing it for the students. And what they're saying, the Department of Administration, for example, suggested that, you know, rather than taking the miles away from the Dr. Edward J. Cruz mileage program, that DOE DOE just established its own program and mirrors that DOA program. And I still think that has some benefit. There's also the cost of the program and what will occur. The bill would then give these students access to the 10 million miles, I guess, or 5 million, I guess, now, you know, and so forth. And so the way that this would work would be the transfer of the miles would include transfer fees. So I guess the students would still have to pay those transfer fees. Again, I do want to say that, you know, it is certainly noble and desirable that we fund some student travel, and if we can do so, I think we should take every opportunity. Senator San Nicolas mentioned my good colleague, I'm sorry, from Chalampago, from Talofofo, now living in the north, had indicated that Governor Joseph Ada gave them the money to travel under the close-up program. It was actually, I think I was in the legislature at that time when he was in middle school, and it was this legislature that appropriated the money for that close-up program. And it was the same way when we did the mock trial programs. It was always coming out of this legislative body. The governor very rarely, unless he uses his transfer authority, can use money, you know, other than what is authorized. And it was this legislature that has a large track record of supporting students and whenever it can, those in need within our community. And so I just kind of wanted to put that for the record. And I know we're moving forward on this. You know, I think that the discussion, while maybe some appear contentious, I think it's all meant to have each of us articulate our positions to the best of our ability, hoping that we can convince the other to make the priorities reflective of the thoughts that we have. But as I said before, you know, we're going to move on this thing, and we're going to cast our vote based upon how we feel and what our priorities are. But I do want to say that nobody has priorities here that is not rooted in good intention and concern for every single member of our community. Thank you, and Susan Master.
Thank you very much. I don't think that was an objection. Okay. Okay. So on the amendment, no objection. You still have the floor, Senator Muñoz Barnes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, again, as we look at the intent of why this bill is being proffered, I want to make sure that we protect the program that exists today with the Wings of Life, and I know that the good senator who works closely with the Azuda Foundation is here listening to us. I believe in my heart that we as policymakers want to make sure that we protect what exists today. And if there's any kind of, I don't know, threat or harsh statement that if we don't work on something that it would be totally taken away from them, I don't want to be a part of that mishap, and I will support the efforts of making sure that this program is intact, and we can always come back with revisions. I know that this program, this legislation talks about collaboration with all the government entities and making sure that when rules and regs are promulgated with the students, with the programs that are going to start with the educational, with the Department of Education, that those rules will come back to us after the AAA process is done, and that gives us the checks and balances to make any changes or add any further recommendations or suggestions when it comes back to this August body. So I just want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to share my concern, to share my support for the program that exists today, and to make sure that that program is in no way, the Wings of Life, taken away from what good they are doing today. So thank you, Mr. Speaker, for letting me share my thoughts.
Thank you very much, Senator Munoz-Barnes. Senator Tony Etta. Senator Tony Etta.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, with the amendment to delete the definition of student, I was looking at page 7 under eligibility 2D. Student is enrolled in the Guam Department of Education. So I'm just wondering now, should we be deleting this section as well, to where they would be the ones to come up with the definition?
Would the author yield? The question is, should line 8 through 11 on page 7 also be deleted?
Oh, no, you wouldn't want to delete that, because then what you wouldn't do is that you would not have, per se, then the mileage go anywhere then if you don't have students. What maybe you want to do is just the part where it says enroll in the Department of Education, that part, that students probably enrolled or school-age children. But what it is that if you go back to page 6 where it says eligibility, it's 1, and then AB under 1, and then 2, ABC under 2. Those are the ones that are eligible in terms of medical. Then 3 will be 3 rather than D, and that's a technical correction that I spoke with legal counsel, that it will be student instead, that also now will be participating in this program. So you don't want to delete the students. Now, the only part is the definition, of course, or the description of the student enrolled in a Department of Education,
So
in the Department of Education. But the student may be authorized by the superintendent of, because then he's going to do the promulgation of the rules and regs, and then also by working, in concert with the other departments and agencies by the rules and regs to determine then who gets to travel, what the process would be.
So then, Mr. Speaker, then would that be then amended to say student as authorized by the Superintendent
Yeah.
of Education to participate, instead of student enrolled in Guam Department of Education.
Yeah, that sounds much better than just deleting the students entirely in this program.
Is there a, is the amendment to read student as authorized by the superintendent of education to participate in an off-island academic, sport, or cultural activity, and remove is enrolled in the Guam Department of Education, and is?
Yes.
Any objection to that amendment? No, this is gone. Unless comes as. Any other senator wish to be heard on the? Any other senator wish to be heard on the main motion? I'll take a short recess.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Um, the last thing to kind of clean up the bill here is that I'm going, notwithstanding the House rules, I would like to ask that we reconsider the actions of this body when we had on page 2, line 7 is added the word "and." That has caused now that to split again of the travelers' mileage accrual and the credit cards. And this entire bill is dealing with the credit cards. And I understand that there was going to be a bill that is going to be introduced to address then the accrual of mileage. So that's my motion.
On the motion to reconsider, Senator Rodriguez, then Senator Yamashita. Senator Rodriguez.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to object to that motion to reconsider. And so I don't know now, do I speak on why I object to it, or does it come back to it?
Go ahead.
Well, I guess, it just, what we're saying here that is if we take out that one word "and," that the only miles that we are going to be accruing are those that are paid by on a credit card. And why would we want to do that, Mr. Speaker, when already the motions here are intact, where we're saying that these miles will be going to these educational purposes? Don't we want to accrue more miles for them, and not just that $1,500 miles or $1,500 ticket, where I understand when you pay it's $1 per 1 mile. And if we by having this word "and," you capture that, plus you capture the actual miles that is being accrued by that employee. So I just don't understand the rationale behind it. So I object to that.
Senator Pangilinan.
I certainly agree with the retiring speaker's remarks, and echo those same sentiments. Again, Mr. Speaker, the idea is that we capture the miles to the maximum possible, and that the miles that are really significant in terms of accumulating these miles to assist our poor and now students are those miles. A ticket to Washington, D.C., for example, would cost you maybe $1,800, $2,200. The distance and the number of miles that you would travel, which accrue to you, to the traveler, is almost twice that amount, if not 3 times that amount. Washington, D.C. is what, 9,000, 10,000 miles away from Guam. So if we captured that miles, that's 9,000 miles. If we only limit it to the purchase, it's only $1,800, $2,200. So we're losing out the more valuable aspect and the ability to accumulate those miles to help our indigent patients, and if this bill passes, students. Why do we want to give that up? I don't think that's a smart move. And if we are in fact going to be accruing so many miles that we're going to be able to take care of students, take care of the poor, and now maybe use it for training and other activities that the government shells out cold hard dollars for, and we can use these miles instead of using cold hard dollars, we can put them to tax refunds. We paid $21 million in tax refunds. We've got $80 million left that we have to pay based upon the collections that we have. We don't have enough money for that. I congratulate setting aside the $21 million and paying that, but we have $80 million left. Where are we going to get that $80 million? That's the challenges that we have. Where are we going to get MIP to pay its vendors is telling us they're going to run short, I believe, $15 million this year, they say, because of some changes. We're trying to ferret that out, So where are we going to get the dollars for that? This is a small way that we can do it in order to free up dollars that would otherwise go, that we can use for other things, and use the miles then to work with the program that we have in order to save that money and use it for other resources. So that's why I'm saying the significant portion that we can accrue to maximize our ability to offset cash expenditures for airline tickets is the miles that is accumulated by the number of miles traveled by that traveler and not by the dollar that is paid for his ticket.
Any other senator wish to be heard? If not, there has been an objection to the motion to reconsider. Those in favor of the motion to reconsider, please indicate by raising your hand. Motion carries. Madam Speaker.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And I'd just like to thank, of course, everyone in their deliberation of this amendment, this bill. There is one request for an amendment that legal counsel had suggested that we needed to do, and had spoken to Senator Rodriguez about this, and that's to add a new section 2 to basically say that this law shall become effective no later than 90 days following enactment, to not
Madam
then...
Speaker.
What?
The motion to reconsider was to
Oh.
reconsider the vote, so we need to retake the vote on the and, unless I'm mistaken. No, we just reconsidered it. We just need to now take a vote on the and. We've reconsidered our vote. For those... All right, those in favor of... Those in favor of the Rodriguez amendment to add the and. Go ahead. Well, he needs 8 votes to reaffirm his amendment.
Okay.
Senator Rodriguez.
Okay.
Yes.
Now rewind to the part where he's offering the amendment. That's where we're at.
Yes.
So on Senator Rodriguez, on your amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'm pleading with my colleagues to, especially to those colleagues of mine who voted to include this one word "and." I mean, it just doesn't make sense, Mr. Speaker. If you look at the individuals who travel on government dime, and maybe, Mr. Speaker, it's time that we ask for an audit and see who are the individuals traveling. I heard in one conversation earlier that that there's a concern that if you have only, let's say, 1,000 or 1,500 miles in your account, you're unable to transfer that. And so I've also heard that we are there's a depreciation on that. But I believe, and and I could be wrong, but I really strongly believe that the individuals that are doing this traveling have been traveling for great amount of time now and have accrued a good chunk of miles that could be deposited into account. If it's in the legislature, we have an account set up here. I think that's the way this bill is setting up now for all these other instrumentalities of the government. But I mean, it just, to me, Mr. Speaker, I'm asking my colleagues to think about if we leave it without the word and just capture the miles that's accrued on the purchase of the tickets, we don't get the bang for our buck. We're not going to get the amount of miles that we're saying we need. And so the amendments or the original language are intact, Mr. Speaker, that says 100% are going to go to these different organizations, Close Up, Junior Statesman, the mock trial, the other who are eligible for off-island sports competitions. so we should maximize. So I don't understand. By removing the word "and," we ain't going to maximize that. The other concern we had, Mr. Speaker, is that we were protecting a real great local nonprofit organization, the Azuda Foundation, and we're still protecting them because the amendment to strike them out, to strike out the mandatory deposit of miles to that organization has been removed. And so, I'm just asking my colleagues to please keep that word and we're saying, we're going to help our students, we're going to help our people who really need the help to go off island for medical reasons. This is the way we're going to do it, by capturing both the miles we use, the miles that we use that are accrued on the trip, as well as what we're paying for those tickets for. So I'm asking my colleagues to please vote in favor of keeping the word "and." Thank you.
Thank you very much. Senator Nicholas has asked to, and you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I hear where Senator Rodriguez is coming from, and I very much agree with him. However, the reason why I cannot support this amendment, this three-letter word, puts the entire system that Senator Eddie Cruz has built at risk. That's why we're needing to strike it, because Azuda Foundation has already clearly communicated to us that this bifurcation of what miles is getting banked is necessary for us to protect the integrity of the existing system. If we don't do it, we run the risk of the entire system coming down with United saying they're not going to honor it at all. And what we need to remember is that miles is not a right. This program and this system that's been built has been built on goodwill. So receiving these miles isn't something that we're entitled to. It's a goodwill system. And in order to protect this goodwill system, to keep it intact, and to then, as this bill intends, to expand it now to our students, we need to make this adjustment. I've never seen a three-letter word have so much impact, and it's something that I'm learning as a senator. And I'm very glad that our colleagues here in the legislature have been very diligent in these kind of details. I agree with Senator Rodriguez. This three-letter word, the inclusion of the word "and," will capture the most amount of miles. The problem is that if we push for this, we run the risk of putting the entire system in jeopardy. And so that's why I rise in objection of the amendment. I believe that we need to protect this system that Senator Eddie Cruz has built, its legacy, its goodwill foundation, and keep it alive so that it can now benefit our students. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, Senator Nicholas. There's been an objection. We'll call the question unless any other senator wishes to be heard. All right, on the Rodriguez amendment, those in favor of the Rodriguez amendment, please indicate by raising your hand. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Motion fails. Madam Speaker.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. After discussion with Senator Rodriguez and legal counsel, and I know we made the move earlier to have removed 12 and 13, but what I'd like to do is add a new section 3 to have this enactment date so that it would say that this law shall become effective no later than 90 days following enactment for section 3. Not taking the October 1, totally leaving that in place, as this is just separate, a new section.
Okay. So the motion is to add a new section 3 to have an enactment date 90 days after enactment.
Yeah.
No later than 90 days after
The law shall become
enactment.
effective no later than 90 days after enactment.
On the proposed Section 3. Any objection? Madam Speaker. Any other speaker on the main motion then? If not, on the motion to send the bill down to the voting file, any objection? What is the pleasure of the, Mr. Majority Leader?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We have one more resolution on the second reading file. It's Resolution 87, and we've been advised by the clerk that it's possible that we could be able to vote on all matters in the voting file today.
All right.
So if I can be recognized to discuss resolution number 87.
You are recognized, Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, first let me start by thanking you for bringing to my attention that the legislature's drug-free workplace policy, while it started off as mirroring the Superior Court of Guam's and the judiciary's drug-free workplace policy, because of the amendments that were made prior to the introduction of this proposal and several amendments that were made on the floor, it doesn't entirely mirror the judiciary's policy. And so what I want to do right now for purpose of the record is to clarify, and you've asked why is it that the judiciary has a 25-page policy, but yet our policy is about 3 pages. The judiciary's, what you were referring to, Mr. Speaker, as we talked about, is you were referring to the standard operating procedure that was adopted subsequent to the court adopting its drug-free workplace policy. And as I look at the difference here, in the court's policy, in Objective 2, we struck out the sentence that dealt with to provide justice to the people of Guam, and so that was not applicable here to the legislature, and so that line was deleted. And the other thing that we did is under Section C and D of the policy, we just deleted the words Human Resource Division of the Superior Court of Guam to put in y Legislature in Guam, because that was more applicable, obviously, to this legislative branch. And with respect to item D, which, as we admit, the amendment to item D, where now it requires that employees are required to notify the administrative director within 5 working days of any criminal drug or alcohol-related conviction. The Superior Court, the judiciary's policy, Mr. Speaker and colleagues, it deals with worksite convictions relative to any criminal drug or alcohol-related activity. And what the amendment did that was adopted yesterday, it would require employees to notify the administrative director within 5 working days of any criminal drug or alcohol-related conviction. And to further clarify that this amendment would in no way mean that the notification of such conviction will then ignite or initiate this drug-free workplace policy. In subsection A, we required that it be limited to at the work site during normal working hours or while on duty. And so the second, we still have, in our proposed drug-free workplace policy, we still have the Employee Assistance Program, we still have the Drug and Alcohol Abuse Awareness Program, and we still have the Drug and Alcohol Screening Program, and I would offer an amendment to say that we have to refer to the standard operating procedures. And we also recognize, as the courts have, the types of drug and alcohol testing. And what we deleted in our proposal that the court has, Mr. Speaker, is they have test designated positions, and since we don't have these positions here in the legislature, we did decide, however, to require random testing of testing designated positions in the event that this legislature or future legislatures want to identify positions that should be subject to random testing. For example, we have a policy here in the legislature that prohibits firearms being brought into the session hall. Now, what we do is we require that the law enforcement individuals either not come into the building or what they do is maybe lock up their guns in a safe place so they know what our policies are. If we required that the sergeant at arms be the one receiving these firearms, then I think at that point we would move to have the sergeant at arms position a test designated position, and so that's why I asked that we leave that there. What we did add that the courts did not have, Mr. Speaker, is we require a section of medication and says employees taking prescribed medication that could interfere with proper performance of their duties will notify their supervisor, and the exec director reserves the right to require a written physician statement verifying the effect of the medication on the employee's ability to perform assigned duties, and medications that are property of staff and have been approved for use on facility premises will be stored in the assigned locker or be in their possession at all times. And so that's what is different from what the court has. And so what I'm asking you, Mr. Speaker, and colleagues is, instead of sending this policy or this resolution back to the Committee on Rules to develop a standard operating procedure, I offer as an amendment to this resolution, and copies have been made and have been distributed, to add a whereas clause that says resolve that the exec director shall develop standard operating procedures using the applicable provisions of the judiciary's drug-free workplace policy, standard operating procedures to implement the legislature's drug-free workplace policy adopted by this resolution, and the standard operating procedures shall be subject to approval or amendment by the Committee on Rules. So the Committee on Rules will still have to vote on this proposal, and then to add the following to 6 of the drug-free workplace policy to read, please refer to the standard operating procedures governing this program. And so I believe that if we develop the policy and then provide for the exec director and the legal counsel and interested staff to put the standard operating procedures, you will in no time, Mr. Speaker, see a policy that's kind of more reflective of the court's 25-page standard operating procedure. And so I ask for this body's consideration to amend Resolution 87 with the amendments that I just proposed.
On the amendments proffered by Majority Leader, any objection? Any senator wish to be heard on it? There being none, amendments adopted.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And on the motion to move Resolution 87 as amended to the voting file, and I want to again thank you for calling this to our attention and for giving me an opportunity to clarify the remarks I made yesterday, and so the record reflects exactly what we're doing with respect to what the judiciary has already done. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
On the motion to place the resolution in the voting file, there being no objection, recess for a second. The legislature stands in recess till Monday at 10, at which time we'll be voting.